The Rufus Project would like to advise the following podcast contains spoilers for Street Fighter from 1994. If you do not wish to have this movie spoiled, please watch it before listening to the following podcast. Is it a fun take on a classic arcade series, or is it fighting a losing battle? We watched Street Fighter from 1994 to see if we could redeem it. Were we successful? Find out after the theme.
Is it too good to be bad? So bad it's good. What's this movie? Do you think we should? It's got bad dialogue, dodgy creatures, but we want to know what the redeeming features. Boy? Oh boy.
Hello and welcome to the Rufus Project, this time looking at Street Fighter from 1994. I am one of your hosts, Trevor Holland, and I am joined by my good friend and co-host,
Kristian Fletcher. Thank you so much, Trevor, for having me back. It's always a pleasure. Even if the movies are... Our chats are always good, even if the movies are a little bit dubious. So, and it's your selection this time around.
It certainly is. Dubious movies? Whatever do you mean?
Never. We've had some interesting ones, but after our last one, which was Tammy and the T-Rex, which we'll have to, we won't spoil anything, but have a listen to that particular one. We could go many different ways with this one, so we're in totally different territory, but sticking within the 90s.
Yeah, well, sticking within the same year,
yeah,
1994.
Exactly. And I do have not fond memories, I suppose. Memories is probably more accurate. I had good memories of, seeing a lot of the trailers and things when this movie was coming out. There was a lot of hype around it and being filmed at Movie World as well. So it's interesting to have been able to finally get a chance to see it.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen it before, but I think it's fair to say I don't think I've watched it since... since we started this podcast, I'm pretty sure the last time I watched it was before then. So it's been a good 4 or 5 years since I last saw this movie. So I was almost watching it fresh myself.
Yeah, well, I was going in completely fresh, not knowing anything about the video game as well. So I might need a bit of hand for some of those parts. But I don't think it matters too much. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't think you need to know too much about the video game, to be honest, but I'm sure we will discuss that as we go. So if anybody out there hasn't seen Street Fighter, I do have a synopsis here of what the movie is about. So this goes, Colonel Guile and various other martial arts heroes fight against the tyranny of dictator M. Bison and his cohorts.
And I think that's a pretty fair plot. Yeah, I can't really think of anything else you could add to that because essentially, when you've got Raul Julia playing, this lead role, it's pretty much does tend to revolve around him quite a lot. But again, I don't want to step too far ahead.
Yeah, well, definitely this is a nice, concise synopsis. So. Would you believe, though, I'll get to a bit more on the turkey trivia, but certainly the movie doesn't have the best reputation, but it was actually nominated for a couple of Saturn Awards at the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy and Horror Films. Oh. And it was nominated for Best Science Fiction Film and Best Supporting Actor, which was Raul Julia, unfortunately by this stage, posthumously.
Well, yeah, I believe he took the role because his children, they must have been fans of the video game, and it was, he was suffering, I believe, from stomach cancer at the time, and a few reviewers have said, you can tell, and I had actually read this before I watched the movie, and you can tell his gaunt appearance, and even though he doesn't seem to be holding back, he still seems to be putting in 110%, even more with the performance. So I think he was I think he was very keen as well to be part of it, not just his kids.
I did have my trivia a bit further down about doing it for his kids who were fans of the game, and essentially he really wanted to participate in a film that he thought that they could all enjoy together. That was basically his main aim in accepting this role.
God, can you imagine how poignant it is for the family to watch the film knowing that, they never were able to experience it with him? Because I believe he he would have died between the time of them filming. Oh, yes, I've got some notes here. He died 2 months before the film's release. So, yeah, so it was very close. So, yeah, and it was very nice of them to dedicate the film in his memory. Whether he'd be rolling in his grave about that or not, I'm not sure. We will get to that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it, but I don't know. I kind of get the feeling that he wouldn't have regretted taking this role, but we will get into that as we go.
Definitely.
Now, speaking of the trivia, since we've already cracked that open, we should talk a bit of turkey trivia about Street Fighter. Now, it is rated 3.8 out of 10 on IMDb.
Ooh, that's a low one.
It had a budget of $35 million. It's considered a flop because it made $33.5 million in the US, but it did end up taking around about $105 million worldwide.
So it did end up making its money back, and I'm sure by the sounds of it, I'm sure there would have been a lot of interest in Australia too. In Queensland, we're considering it was filmed here as well. I don't know if that would have made some sort of significant dent in the box office, but I wasn't realising it went all the way up to 101 million.
Yeah, I was quite surprised too, because I've always heard it was a flop, but then again, when we talk box office and box office flop, a lot of it really focuses on that US box office, and kind of just ignores the rest of the world.
So pretty much, if it doesn't catch hold in the first couple of weeks, it's considered a dud. I think we'd probably be surprised. A few titles, iconic movies, you'd be surprised that they actually were box office duds. But but I never know. Street Fighter might be one of those bombs that gets reimagined or brought back to the big screen. I'm not going to be doing it, but so we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
So
now, looking at some of the trivia, Jean-Claude Van Damme, who is the star of the movie, I suppose you could say, he revealed that he had a bit of a drug problem during the filming of this movie, and also he had an extramarital fling with Australia's own Kylie Minogue.
Oh, really? Which is, it seems like a very...
Saucy.
It doesn't seem very like a compatible match, but hey, it sounds like she possibly was available at the time, and he didn't seem to mind. But it's even weird hearing you say Jean-Claude Van Damme as the star and Raul Julia being the supporting, because I kind of see it around the other way. But I'll forgive it, because I'm sure that I think that's how the billing was on the film. So
yeah, definitely, it's considered a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie in that ilk. But again, we shall discuss who the real star is as we go
along.
Yeah. Now, speaking of, I suppose, video game movies, and also ones that have featured previously in this podcast, good old Jean-Claude, he turned down the role of Johnny Cage in the Mortal Kombat movie to do this movie.
Oh, okay. Which is interesting because, as I will say as we get further, I did see a lot of comparisons with the two movies, so it kind of feels like he didn't really stray too far from his original decision. But I don't really know. It's been that long since we watched Mortal Kombat. I'm actually trying to remember what part that was, but I'm assuming he was the main in Mortal Kombat. Or would have been.
Well, they kind of had a couple of mains.
Yeah, the two guys.
Johnny Cage. Yeah. But yeah, he was one of the main guys. Johnny Cage in Mortal Kombat. Oh boy.
So we didn't stray too far from the video game adaptation anyway.
No. We've got a choice between two of the biggest fighting games in the world. I guess you've got to make the call.
Yeah.
One way or the other. Now, in 2010, Empire magazine ranked this movie as number 27 in its 50 worst movies ever.
Oh, really? Okay. I thought you were going to say worst movies ever based on video games. So,
no, just
literally
ever.
On their top 50 list. Wow. So that must have made a dent over there. Again, Empire magazine. Oh, no, they're based in Australia, aren't they? I was going to say it's an American thing again, but yeah. So that could be a personal taste of the magazine. You never know.
Quite possibly. Now, speaking of personal taste, I didn't even realise this when watching the movie. But you watch it and you automatically think, oh, there's this radio announcer doing the Robin Williams thing from Good Morning Vietnam. Mm-hmm. Turns out that the DJ of that is actually Adrian Cronauer, the guy that Robin Williams played in Good Morning Vietnam.
Aha!
It's the actual guy, and he does his signature sign-on phrase as "Good morning, Shadowloo," being the name of the fictional country.
Well, that makes a lot more sense because, at first I was thinking, oh, maybe is it a rip-off thing, or maybe it was a thing that they just, I don't know, was a common thing that was done. But that's interesting they got him back, and I actually think his bits added some interesting parts to it. Even though they were very few, but especially when they use him over the end credits as well.
Yeah, I've got a few comments about that.
Again, jumping ahead, I can't be talking about the end credits just yet.
No, we're a little way away from there. Now, one of the other, I suppose, featured characters from the game that appears in this movie is the character of Vega, and the original consideration for that role was one gentleman by the name of Fabio.
Oh, really? Oh gosh, what a lineup that would have been. He was too busy getting gooses in his face or whatever. I don't know what time when that was. But yeah, that would have been...
I think this was before he collided with the goose or the duck on the roller coaster.
Yeah. Oh, that would have been a very much different movie, I think. And already it feels like such an odd lineup of characters based on the odd lineup of cast based on the actual movie itself. So to change it like that would have been unusual.
Yeah, well, you think this is a strange lineup? In 2003, Jean-Claude Van Damme was working on the sequel Street Fighter II, with apparently Dolph Lundgren lined up for an unrevealed role. Kylie wasn't going to come back as Cammy. She was going to be replaced by Holly Valance, who has also featured in a previous fighting game movie, DOA, that we've done on this podcast.
Of course, and I'm like, are they just going through Neighbours actresses, are they?
I don't know what they're doing. Now, the plans for that sequel were eventually scrapped, and instead they did the reboot Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li, which was released in 2009.
It's done as a direct-to-DVD, was it?
I think so. I've heard of that movie. I haven't actually watched it or dug into the details of it yet.
Let's see how it compares with this one, because I'm actually that's what confused me a bit, because considering this movie was based apparently on Street Fighter 2 rather than the first game, so I would have been quite confused if they had made another film and called it Street Fighter 2. People would be like, what game is this?
Well, that's okay, because Street Fighter 2 was re-released in about 100 different editions. There's a lot more trivia I could have put in here about linking with the game.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. And I've got a few notes here too, just supposedly basic ones, but there's quite a few here, and there seems to have generated quite a lot of video game adaptations after.
Yeah. Well, as we can see, technically it was a successful movie, so
even though much we did not think it was, but there you go, we learnt something.
That's right. Now, another thing too is if you did watch Street Fighter, you may have recognised the actress playing Chun-Li, because she currently plays Agent May in Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Because I did,
which has been going for like 5 years.
Well, I did actually recognise her from other things, and I wasn't sure what. But so that makes a bit more sense now.
Yeah, that's mainly where I recognise her from. But I have seen her in plenty of other things. So, yeah,
there we go. Wow, and as it sounds of it, we could do a whole podcast just on the trivia for this movie.
There was so much. I felt I put down too much here anyway, but there we go. Anyway, so before we get into chatting about the movie itself, as I can tell, we've already, I think, again, started edging into that territory, as we often do, but we need to set our baseline, Kristian.
I know.
We've got to see what we're working from, and I've got to say, with the reviews on this movie, no matter which level they're at, there seem to be either little quick one-liners or essays. So I've managed to find one that was kind of in the middle. It's a bit longer than I normally like, but this is the best I could find. So for our baseline review, it's titled, "They Released a Collector's Edition for This?" I actually watched this movie 3 times to absorb its true inner badness, and I found that the film is truly horrible on more levels than you could possibly imagine. The acting is deplorable, to be sure, The only one who's even putting forth any real effort is Raul Julia, who was way too wonderful an actor to have been tricked into making this abomination. Of course, Van Damme is about as believable and emotive an actor as Carrot Top, so you should know what to expect. As for the rest of the cast, well, let's just say the actors didn't do their own martial arts, and the martial artists did their own acting. The plot is pretty much a bunch of random scenes put in a blender. We go from one unbelievable situation to another into territories that neither make sense nor entertain. If you love video games and are truly curious about this movie, skip it anyway. Trust me, I've seen this movie 3 times for you people. Along with binge drinking, coke snorting, and violent car crashes without seatbelts, this is one of the most brain-damaging experiences one can undertake. Next time anyone asks you if you want to try this movie, just say no. 1 star.
Wow, that reads more like a public service announcement. Oh my gosh, okay, yeah, that is quite a scathing review. So, and the fact that they've watched it they actually went back 2 more times and watched it.
Yeah. That's like the after-school special of reviews. And yeah, but basically, look, okay, Kristian, it was over 90 minutes, which I know is one of our benchmarks, but it was still under 2 hours. So
it's
that's
such a
okay,
good feeling.
Right?
And you usually know with movies like this, and as was the case, not the trailers, the end credits always seem to take a little, quite a while longer. So I felt like we were getting an hour and a half movie anyway. So, but we do watch it to the very end, but we will get to that because there was a couple of little bits I wasn't expecting.
Well, the end credits may have gone a while, but the opening titles, that didn't waste any time at all.
And I love that. And look, I've got written down here, it grabs you straight away and wastes no time. And the more I think about it, not that I remember all of them, but a lot of the video game movies we have watched, that's been a common thing that we have said. Like, it doesn't waste any time. And it has to almost kind of recap, I don't know, for people at home, i.e. me, that knows nothing about the game, it kind of feels like it has to give you a bit of a synopsis, a bit of narrative. And the good thing about this, it went straight into it using those really well-edited news reports. Like, I was really quite impressed with how they edited it together. Like, it wasn't just someone narrating, it was a good way to sort of, give us an update on where we were, especially from me, who was coming in really fresh.
Yeah, well, we find out we meet Chun-Li quite quickly because she's one of the news reporters, and she does really give us a full summary of the situation. It's like, apparently this is worldwide news. Apparently everybody already knows about him. So why is she spending so long explaining the exact situation with M. Bison? I don't know, but it's handy for exposition.
Yeah, exactly, and they get to bring a few lines up later on, like, at the end of the movie where, they get to bring in the journalism line again, So she pretty much starts off journalist, but really, as you said, it's more just for us to sort of get a bit of an idea of what's happening, and then she does become a bigger part of the plot too, so.
That's true. During that whole opening news sequence, we get the fact that we cut to M. Bison, Raul Julia, really, really early, watching the news broadcast about himself, apparently with great pleasure.
Oh, yeah. And that was another bit that really grabbed me in terms of editing. Like, I love the way that was edited, and it was pretty much, they mentioned General Bison, it was straight to him. It wasn't us sort of waiting around to find out, to see this bad guy. They weren't wasting any time at all.
And not wasting any time in showing just how nasty he was as he's challenging these soldiers to fights, and just basically they run up to him, he grabs them, there's a cracking sound as he basically breaks their neck or something, and they drop down dead, and he takes on the next one. It's like, ooh.
And pretty much from the outset, like, I really loved the the style, the sort of the very villainous location that he was based in, It kind of was the only... I was kind of expecting that style all the way through the movie with sort of other locations, but everything else was quite normal, and he was living in this quite elaborate... building and stuff. And I really appreciated the set design, but it was really hard for me to always get around the fact knowing that this was filmed at Movie World. There was even a few different parts in the movie where I'm like, I think I know where that was. So it was really hard for me to get past that real studio-bound thing. I know lots of films are filmed like this, but this film in particular was just hard for me to get around that. I felt like I was on a studio tour at Movie World, pretty much.
Yeah. Oh, there was some bits later which were clearly filmed on the Brisbane River. That really... I'm thinking, That's the Brisbane. Oh, that's definitely the Brisbane River.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
they're on the Brisbane River.
Well, I was thinking that at one stage. Then I also thought at one stage it was down the coast, sort of in where the canals are, kind of thing. But the more I think about it, yeah, possibly it would more likely was Brisbane. So, and it said Revilia Studios in the end credits. So I'm not even sure where that was or where it was in Brisbane. But yeah, you probably were right. It probably was on the Brisbane River. And I have no recollection of seeing that or hearing about it being done there. But anyway,
yeah, I mean, it would have been so exciting for us at the time if we had have known, but no.
We could have been a part of it anyway. But yeah, so they definitely haven't wasted any time. And look, to mention a film that we've done before, and listeners, you'll have to check this one out to hear our full report. But Star Crash from 1978. If only Christopher Plummer had played his role a bit more like Raul Julia as the king of the universe, I think the film would have been something a bit more fun. So that's what I love, is he didn't sort of hold back at all, considering his ill health at the stage. He seemed to already be running rings around everybody, from the outset.
That's just it. Like, every line he delivers is just, I've got to say, it's immaculate. I may have fangirled over Antonio in the Evita podcast. This podcast, guaranteed I'm going to be fangirling over Raul Julia.
Hey, and
he was amazing.
Oh, and hey, you have every right to, because and it's probably also too hard for these other actors as well, because straight away you go from him camping it up and loving every minute to the very questionable acting of Van Damme and Kylie a little bit later. But because I think again we get the mentioning how we zoomed into the TV and saw Bison, but I think the same thing happened is Bison was watching the TV, that's right, and Van Damme's like, I know he's listening, so he ends up doing his report, and I think that's the first time we see him.
That's right, yeah, he grabs the microphone and just goes, Bison, I know you're watching this. I'm coming for you.
And that's probably pretty much the limit of it. I always think with these type of movies, there's always those real sort of, I say, one-liners. It feels, and this film wasn't short on it, and probably one-liners isn't the right word, but just every line of dialogue just feels like Mr. Freeze from Batman and Robin.
Yeah, they tried to give Jean-Claude a number of snappy wisecracks, but not many of them landed.
Oh. And it seemed like whenever they did want to bring anything sort of comedic in, it was sort of always the henchman or some little sidekick. Like, I can't remember later on where the guy, that's right, I think it was when Bison broadcasts, and one of the guys goes, can we change the channel or something like that, and it sort of became anything that they attempted to be funny was put on these sort of smaller characters. Pretty
much, yeah, and I think we get introduced to Zangief pretty early. I don't even know if they actually say his name. That's big Russian guy.
Guy with the eye patch?
With a mohawk.
Oh, yep, just checking, because as you said, they didn't say his name.
Yeah, so he was like the henchman, and they just basically made him be the dopey henchman who has no idea what's going on. So he says something completely so funny because it's so ignorant about what's going on. Even towards the end, where he just goes, "We've been working for the bad guy."
You're just like, especially at the end where you're like, okay, this sort of stuff's probably outstayed its welcome by now. It had already outstayed its welcome. We're probably only 5 minutes into the movie at this stage.
Yeah, because I believe that he's the one who suggests that they turn off the TV or something when something's happening that Bison doesn't like.
Van Damme does his report, and then we go to, I don't know, where they're having their meeting or whatever, and we've got Kylie Minogue introduced for the first time. Or maybe we saw her in the broadcast, but anyway, it's sort of her first chance at acting anyway.
Yeah, and she was trying to do a British accent through a lot of this movie.
Well, yeah, I was confused.
It was a very strange British accent that she couldn't maintain. It was just like, Kylie, just give it up.
I know.
Seriously, you can't do that accent. Just be an Australian cammy. Just do it, because that accent is terrible.
And there's something about, like, not that she's in that many films, but there's something about her acting style that never quite wins me over. It's never quite convincing. And I'm sorry, Kylie, but I must admit this movie was one of those parts as well. But as you said, she seems like she's trying.
Yeah, you got to give her points for trying.
And I did really appreciate, like I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, but that bit where she's doing her sort of rundown and whatever, everything's happening, and that guy just breaks in and everyone shoots her. It's like, yep, no one interrupts Kylie when she's talking. But I think they did that sort of, they did sort of things like that. I suppose it was supposed to be a bit of a visual gag. But again, these sort of things tie in a lot to like video games because someone always jumps out and you have to shoot them really quickly. I don't know. I always see a lot of these comparisons and think they've sort of put these in there to have a bit of a comparison to the fact, hey, this was based on a video game.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they don't seem to need much of an excuse for a fight of some description to break out. I mean, even when we get introduced to our other heroes, Ryu and Ken, who turn up, and it's basically a big fight club run by the guy with the eye patch, Sagat.
Oh, is that his
Sagat.
name? Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, because I mean, I actually do know these characters because I've played Street Fighter.
Yeah, see, that's it. So you have one up on me. So see, I was going in completely fresh, but that's the thing. Was it Ryu and Ken? They sort of reminded me a lot of. Again, I'm going off probably a very distant memory, but watching Mortal Kombat when it was pretty much the two guys, I don't know. I sort of got a feel for like that they'd be the sort of the heroes of the piece, pretty much.
Yeah, but yeah, they come in as a couple of con men, basically trying to con the criminals by selling them toys instead of weapons. Which that was a cute touch, especially when they got lined up to get shot by their own weapons, and they just basically
help them with like. Isn't it tennis balls or something?
Sponge ball firing things, yeah.
And I don't know if it was around here, but there was a quote, I like my game live in living colour. And that was like, aha, yeah, that was, yeah, you're doing a live action video game. Little nod
absolutely. But one thing I did notice, and it bugged me for a while, until, because I was watching this with Susie and she's the one who called it. But the guy that played Sagat, the guy with the eye patch, is the same guy who played the Sphinx in Mystery Men.
Oh yeah. Again, trying to remember, but yeah, that is coming back to me. Oh my gosh, what is it with these actors coming back for the Rufus project all the time?
I don't know. There's a nice return appearance from him there.
Well spotted, Susie.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Oh gosh, but so we end up finding out that they're pretty much attempting to make the perfect soldier as well too, and that's we end up seeing that that's the board, I think. Anyway, I don't want to spoiler alert, but ruin anything for the ending. But I'm assuming that's the board I think that he used. He ended up coming back to life, but I don't want to ruin too much.
Yeah. It gets messy towards the end. I mean, I know we'll cover that over, but just straight up, this does get pretty messy towards the end.
I'm so confused. It didn't take me... Look, I don't get confused easily, but this film did feel... I feel like that reviewer that needed to watch it 3 times. I wasn't going to put myself through that, but I felt like there was a lot. So I'm glad it wasn't just me that found that all a bit messy.
Yeah. But like, with Ryu and Ken, when they do end up getting into the fight in the club... I couldn't help noticing that there were lots and lots of very fast cuts in editing during that fight scene. So, what they do when you got people that can't really fight and you need to try to do a convincing fight scene, lots of quick cuts so that it looks like the action is fast and furious when really they're just basically striking a pose for a few seconds. Particularly when you saw Kylie Minogue fight later on in the movie. It was just like, that was just, even with the fast editing, she still looks so unconvincing with her fighting technique.
There's one part too where, she's rolling over and you see that the person, and you can see that they're wearing a Kylie Minogue type wig, and the wig kind of came a bit skew. I don't know. The joys of being able to pause things. They're probably thinking, I'm in the cinema, no one's going to notice this. But yeah, I do know what you mean. And I didn't notice it with other ones, but the more I think about it now, the fast cuts definitely could cover a lot of stuff up.
Yeah, kind of weird. Like when you actually did get 2 people that could fight together, the fight scenes were pretty good, but they weren't very, very regular. Let's put it that way. Most of the fight scenes were lots of quick cuts or stand-ins, basically.
Yeah, and it felt...
And not convincing stand-ins either.
And it felt like one of those movies that they were just trying to, again, with a very, when you're going off video games, you've got such a slight plot, but it just felt like they were doing whatever they could to flesh this out, and I think that's where it started to become confusing. rather than straight to the point. Like, I don't know. And, but that could have been a lot. Like I was saying, I praised the editing at the start. Like, I liked that it was sort of very rapid, not just in the fight scenes, but, you know, getting us into it. But I think that ended up sort of making it a bit confusing in some respect. But actually, another thing that I noticed quite a lot, and like obviously, I realised that you know, Bison was a big deal in this, and the emblem. Okay, the Street Fighter emblem. I got to the point where I could count, like, you know, 5 representations of it a frame in that movie. If that was product placement, that was the best product placement you've ever seen. I got to the point where I couldn't unsee the Street Fighter emblem in just about everything, in particular Bison, you know. But, I just thought they used that in every possible way. There was even so many set pieces that were even shaped like the, you know, the eagle or the, I think that's, or the crest or whatever it is. But, I just noticed it was coming up quite a lot.
Well, I think they pretty much made it Bison's crest. Like when they cut to him discussing his plans for Bisonopolis, and talking about how it needs a big food court because, you know, all the big vendors will want to come along, and they zoom out from it, and like the whole front of it is shaped in that crest shape. With Bison's logo right there, in the, like, making the building itself. He's going, okay.
Yeah, they didn't hold back on using that, but I did actually like that part, how he was walking through that Bisonopolis, because they were kind of doing that whole thing of showing him taking over the world, because he was literally peering out from behind the buildings, you know. But yeah, so that was a clever. Yeah, there was a couple of little clever touches that I, you know, appreciated in the movie with things like that too.
Mostly involving things around Bison.
Yeah, well, and I think I don't know. I think it might have been in the next scene where you just see a book on the guy's dash. I think it was, I can't remember what it was, but it said Chandelou on $25 a day. Just these little things like that. Like, they made sure there were these little sort of things, and I kind of refer to it more to myself as, that's the amount of coins you have to accumulate to get through the game. But it's probably thinking a bit much.
Quite possibly. But those guys, the camera crew for Chun-Li, who just happened to be a sumo wrestler and a boxer.
Yeah.
Amazing coincidence.
Oh, of course.
And they can do magic as well, as we find out later. Very, very talented news crew.
Well, this is where it gets sort of confusing, where you've got sort of, you know, you're introduced to sort of Ryu and Ken, thinking they're going to be sort of, I don't know, the heroes, and then you've got Chang Li, and then you've got these two guys, but then as we find out, they all sort of end up sort of teaming together, or you know, for the final showdown. But they're definitely saying introduced you to a few more people, which it started to get a bit confusing for me. But again, thinking, is this like the game or what? So I don't know if a lot of these characters had been thrown in.
Yeah, well, I mean, all the main characters are basically people from the game, but like, it was almost like they were just there until it kind of became relevant to mention that, you know, that Honda, the guy who drove the van, was a sumo wrestler, and what's the boxer's name? Balrog.
You're doing better than I.
You know, was a big boxer. You know, it's not mentioned at all, and then suddenly it's like, you're the. Actually, I think it's even like it just exclaimed out by Ken or Ryu, goes, "You're the famous sumo wrestler, and you're that boxer." Okay, thanks.
Yeah, well, straight to the point and filling us in a little bit though, which is good. But, So I think from there, it's around this time when we see Chun-Li. I've got Li Chung here. Sorry, Chun-Li about to sneak in, and sort of, again, I liked the style of how she did that. It was very game-like, and that's when she, I don't know, there's a bit of irony finding Guile alive in the morgue.
Yeah, well, we haven't even talked about the whole
the shooting.
Ryu and Ken after being taken to show the refugees in the field hospital by Guile of Jean-Claude, and they're looking around, and then suddenly they're helping Sagat, who was trying to kill them, helping him to escape, and oh no, Ken shoots Jean-Claude Van Damme. I mean, I'm trying to discuss this without basically saying what happens, but you kind of have to in this case.
Yeah, I know. And honestly, Trevor, it's helping me out, because there was a lot of parts where I was scratching my head, so...
Well, yeah, because as they're driving off in the truck, you see Chun-Li throw something at the truck. And so you find out later in the news van, they're tracking like a microphone or something she threw into the truck, and they went, oh, there's interference. Where's that coming from? It's coming from AN headquarters, and that's when she goes into the very clearly labelled morgue. Yeah. We've got another clearly labelled morgue.
But it's always, because we had that in the last, and Tammy and the T-Rex as well, and they always seem so easy just to slip in, don't they? But then, I suppose, probably a little bit better with Chung-Li, because she seemed, quite nimble and good with that sort of stuff, so...
Oh, yeah, because she totally was dressed in black, standing on a, like a upper level walkway with a window directly behind her, making her stick out like a sore thumb. Yet none of the soldiers could see her.
They're too busy in gameplay, I don't know.
yeah, but look, we all know that Guile, fakes his own death. I mean, it's blatantly obvious what's meant to be happening. But why have, like, the thing keeping track of their tracking device, why have that in the morgue? There's, like, no reason for him to be running that operation from the morgue, and then she goes in and sort of like checks on him, and then he sits up and starts wisecracking at her. It's like, why are you running the operation from the morgue? Yeah. And why does the morgue have what appears to be human organs in jars and no other bodies? It looked more like a bloody university laboratory or something than a morgue.
It's like they've just picked any old building and just put a sign out the front saying morgue as some kind of cover-up, but it didn't work well. But yeah, I was quite kind of confused how it just sort of went from they're in a morgue to the next thing. Oh, that's right, you've got your operation in here. It was a bit strange.
Yeah, it's like that I don't know what you're doing, and of course he tries to arrest Chun-Li and has her escorted out by Kylie Minogue and the most useless sidekick guy ever, so of course she escapes easily from them. And he just sticks his head out of the window and just goes, so what's going on, guys? And I think we need to talk more about Raul Julia.
I'm feeling like we need to go. And that's the thing, listeners. It's not like we haven't seen him for a while. He does often come back and interject and stuff. And his role is quite significant in the film. And that's like I was saying earlier. I sort of see him more as the star. And I think probably in comparison to Jean-Claude Van Damme, I think that's probably the reason why. Is he just stands out so much more because he seemed to be the only one sort of putting in a bit of effort. But with a role like that, you have to be over the top and campy, I suppose.
Yeah, he was such a happy dictator.
He loved doing that stuff to those people, But then when you've got a set and a big throne or whatever that he had and that sort of cape, I could see, it could be fun.
Oh, absolutely, and yeah, like you mentioned the whole. I think you mentioned the whole super soldier thing earlier. When he finds out that one of the guys he's about to try to fight and kill is a friend of Guile's, so he decides that this guy, I can't remember the first name they gave him. His last name was Blanca, which I'm sure fans of the movie will recognize, fans of the game will recognize. So he decides that's the guy that he needs to send downstairs for the reluctantly pensive scientist to reprogram, as he injects him full of very clearly labelled green and yellow chemicals.
Because that's the way to do it in every movie, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's and I don't know if is this around the time when Chung-Li decides this is when they start doing their plan, when they break in through when they're having Bison's entertainment, I think it was. He's getting entertained and she does a dance for him or something, or there's a group of them.
Yeah, they do like this magic trick where they put her in a barrel, and like the two other guys doing the magic trick are a news crew that nobody recognises, even though Bison has no trouble and basically makes it clear that he's been following her movements since she entered the country, but does not recognise her just because she's got like a little mask on her face when they're doing this magic trick thing. Yeah. To kind of distract everybody so they can get in to what I believe was an arms deal, but seemed more like some sort of circus.
Yeah, some underground circus thing. I don't know. But yeah, and that sort of thing always confuses me because you think in the universe that it's existing in, like, as if they're just going to get up and start performing. Isn't someone going to go, hey, we're on next? You know, why are you guys performing? But it seemed to be a very handy plot device anyway.
Yeah. Like they would have just turned up there. I mean, there were dancing girls there. There were like people there that were obviously meant to be there, but no one questioned where this magic troupe that looked remarkably like Chun-Li and her crew turned up.
And as you said, not covered in very much, like not covered facially.
Yep. But that's when we find out, actually another great thing, when we find out that when Bison goes to pay Sagat for the weapons he's supplying and pays him in Bison dollars, which are going to be worth 5 great British pounds per the Bison dollar, after he invades England and kidnaps the Queen and holds her ransom. The guy's ambitious. You can't take that away.
And that was one of those things where I'm like, well, I doubt that was in the video game. But it was good that they it was good they acknowledged that, you know, that they were acknowledged Britain and stuff like that. And hey, maybe that's where the Kylie Minogue accent is again. But yeah, she probably shouldn't have bothered. But yeah, I thought that was clever as well.
Yeah, Kylie. It kind of disappears for a large chunk of this movie, though. But it's probably good that she doesn't have too much dialogue through the majority of the movie, because when she is in there, they give her way too many lines for that accent.
Oh, I know, and I always find it really hard to get her voice is never convincing in general. I think especially from the period that it was made, you always think of her. She's still in the sort of Neighbours era, like
the Neighbours / Singing Budgie era.
Yeah,
it was. Yes,
it's so hard to get around that. But I was expecting her to have a bigger role. I was expecting sort of her and her and Van Damme to be the sort of the two leads. But it was one of those movies where it threw to a lot of different people, but essentially it was everyone under Raul Julia, really.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure people get the idea that Raul Julia stole this one from everybody else. But oh god, they had so much technology tracking everyone. Everywhere you looked, there was something tracking somebody else, or there was something tracking a truck, or there was something tracking the location of somebody else. You're going, how much tracking do people have, and where was all this tracking tech before? Because as far as I knew, they had one truck which they put a tracker on, but suddenly they can keep an eye on where specific people are. I mean, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Or am I overthinking this?
Oh, again, it's probably things that they didn't even think people would question. You know, I think a lot of times they're clutching at straws to make the world of this video game into something substantial, to make it an hour and a half movie. And I know there's a lot going on, but it just felt like they were throwing in too much when it could have been a lot simpler. I think we just wanted more scenes of Raul Julia just throwing the cape around and striding up the corridor.
Very, very, very much so. Oh, sorry, I was trying to think ahead there for a moment.
You're right. I'm so confused about where we're up to. Because we were so many. Yeah, it's one of those kind of movies.
Why worry about order when we can just talk about strange things that happen in the movie?
Exactly.
Woo!
Well, I've already got...
Another strange moment happened to me, though, when they're starting to organise their assault, because they know where Bison's base is now, and they're getting the troops together, ready to go, and the officials turn up, and you've got the guy with the blue folder, and this was another time where I'm just going, I want to focus on this movie, but I know who that guy is, and he is Simon Callow, and he was in Four Weddings and a Funeral. He played the main character that died about halfway through the movie.
I haven't seen it for so long. Yeah, but it's funny you say that, because as soon as he came in, I'm like, I know that face from somewhere too. And again,
I mean, he's been in so many things.
So, well, I'm surprised we didn't see more. Considering it was filmed in, on the Gold Coast and in Brisbane, I was surprised that we didn't see more sort of local faces. I don't mean local Brisbane faces, but you'll always see Australian actors pop up in things, and I was surprised we didn't see a few more. I don't know, maybe they paid too much for Kylie.
Yeah, well, I'm sure plenty of the extras, like the soldiers and Bison's soldiers. I'm pretty sure a large number of that would have been filled from the local actor pool.
Interesting. I wonder if we've got anyone that we know that apparently was involved and what they think of having been involved. But we shall see.
I think if I was involved in any way in this movie, I'd just be going, "Yep, I was in there with Raul Julia."
Yeah, exactly. You could say you performed that you were in a movie with him. So that's what you need to say.
Absolutely. You know, he goes in there, he basically tells them that they're going to pay the ransom. We probably should have mentioned that Raul Julia's got like a bunch of peacekeepers held hostage. He's going to kill them unless he gets $20 billion. And this guy turns up just as they're about to go attack the fortress to say, "No, don't do it, we're going to pay the ransom." So that lets Jean-Claude do his very, very stirring speech where he gets to finally declare that he's going to go and kick Bison's ass.
Again, kind of what we were saying about Kylie. You don't want to give him too many lines either. But at least he's coming out with those, as we say, one-liners that you kind of expect. Because, you know, I do remember when this movie came out, I'm trying to think of films at the time, but he was the go-to guy for action films at the time. So it was, it was probably fitting very much into his character as well.
I'm sure, like, Jean-Claude Van Damme films from around this time, we could probably do an entire season of this podcast just focusing on those movies.
But don't worry, listeners, we won't.
No, but I'm thinking he will have to have a returning appearance for the podcast at some point.
Definitely.
In the future. What I did notice, especially as the movie got into its like second half, is that they actually actively worked into the plot reasons for these characters to get dressed up like they look in the game itself. When we first see Ken and Ryu, they are wearing these terrible looking suits. It's like, this is 1994, guys, not 1982. Yeah. But then when they get ingratiated with Bison, they head down to the dojo, the dojo when they get their martial arts suits on, or their gis, I think they're called.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
And it's like, okay, Ken's wearing his white, Ken's wearing his red, Ryu's wearing his white. Okay, they're dressed like their characters. And then Chun-Li gets taken off to Bison's private chambers for a private interview and gets changed into this oriental outfit, which, you know, is very similar to the Chun-Li outfit in the game. And, like, you know, they actually work. Honda, the sumo wrestler in the game, he doesn't wear a shirt, so he actually gets tortured and whipped, which is a very bizarre scene in itself. So he ends up being able to just rip his shirt off when he gets into a fight with the Russian dude, Zangief. It's like, you know, they're all basically end up dressed like their counterparts in the game. I found that was actually quite well done. It didn't seem forced.
Me not knowing the video game, like I didn't even notice that was a thing. And looking at it, with fresh eyes, it wasn't an issue. So, but yeah, no, I think that is clever, especially when that's what those characters are identifiable as. It would almost be a shame not to show them in the way that people know them as, especially for fans of the game.
Yeah, so I thought that was a nice nod, and that was pretty well done. But speaking of Chun-Li in Bison's private chambers, first of all, she seems very, very cheery and happy, telling him the story of how he killed her father after attacking her village.
That's the thing I noticed, about that part too. And I actually think it was more a lot to do with her acting. Like, I know you said she's been in some other things, and I don't know what she's like in other films, but I found that monologue or that bit so unconvincing. Her acting was just really, I don't know, felt very fake. So I don't know if that's kind of what you were getting.
Yeah, I mean, it was like she was trying to be flirty and menacing at the same time. I mean, towards the end, she did get a lot more serious, and it seemed a bit more convincing. But no matter what she did, here's Raul Julia just walking around. He dims the lights. He changes into a robe. He swaps his dictator cap for a dictator cap that matches his robe.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Puts on the music. Opens up the bar, pours the drink, you go, just to watch, and she just keeps talking, and he just keeps doing these things, making everything more romantic.
Realizing the whole movie's just all about me, so...
yeah. Well, I mean, because that leads into one of which is honestly one of the most famous lines of this movie, which I do indeed love, where he finally goes back to her and just goes, because he says he doesn't recall it at all, and she's stunned, and he just goes, "That day was the most important day of your life. For me, it was Tuesday." It's like, that is gold.
See, I didn't even realise that was seen as a line that people have quoted. But that's good to know now. Actually, yeah, I knew that had to be some a one-liner that came from this movie that people would still use.
He's got a lot of one-liners.
Oh, I know.
Particularly towards the end, but we'll get to those, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to remember thinking now what we're actually up to, because as you said, we're getting now into the third act or the second half, and it just seems to be going even more over the top and more of those, what I call the Matrix-esque jumps, where they're sort of, very much like a game, when the kicks, I've noticed a lot more of that sort of stuff coming through now, and it was definitely in video game territory, and that became a bit sort of messy for me, but especially because, as we said, with so many people standing in, the editing was very fast. Because
this is where we lead into the assault on the base. And this is where you see the boats going up the river, and it's like, at one moment you're going, that's the Brisbane River. Oh my God, the Brisbane River looks absolutely filthy and disgusting. But then that's cut with, because looking at this, there are also sections that were filmed in Thailand, which are also on Thai rivers. So it kind of like they're going through, and there's jungle all around them, and then it cuts back to them again, and there's industrial stuff on the banks, because the footage is cut between stuff filmed in Brisbane and stuff filmed in Thailand, and like there's no actual direct. There's no consistency between the shots.
Well, I think I even noticed the ones that were in Brisbane, there was like, as you said, industrial, and it's like a couple of cranes and things in the background. And and it was sort of hard to know where it was going between. And no offence, Brisbane River, but I don't think they would have had to have changed the colour of the water too much, would they?
No.
Oh, no. Gosh. Yeah, it didn't look too good, did it? Wasn't necessarily a selling point for the town.
No, but I mean, really, if you come into Brisbane, it's not for the water sports. Let's just put it that way.
You never know. People might want to do a Street Fighter tour of all the places it was filmed.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised if there are people out there that would do that. Yeah. But we get to have more of Kylie's wonderful accent, and as Bison realizes that the base is being attacked, he hops into his hovering command center. And then it cuts to his control panel, and it's a Street Fighter joystick setup. That is just beautiful.
I just love, and I love that fact that it got to the stage where he was using that, what did you call it, like his platform or whatever, where he was using it just he'd lower himself down in the screen. It was just, even that was heightening the campness of his performance, I really appreciated that. But I did like I liked those little touches when they did actually come through. Not that they were that often, but they always seem to be revolving around where Bison's based. He sort of had all the clever, I don't know, the more fantasy type style with the sets.
Yeah, I mean, it was a full-on evil villain lair. I mean, there was no there was no subtlety in his setup. It was just like massive, great big screens, flashing lights and computers everywhere, and a floating command center that he could hover around the room in.
Again, I was looking at that scene going, I wonder what studio at Movie World that was. And there was even a couple of parts, I know I keep mentioning Movie World, but there was a couple of parts, I think, earlier when they were, all the trucks were coming through. It looks like that area around the Lethal Weapon ride and all that, so I wouldn't be surprised if it actually was where it was filmed in those spots, so...
Oh, yeah, I mean, there was definitely, some of those scenes, it's just like, that looks strangely familiar for some reason.
Walked down that before.
Yeah. But I mean, really, this whole section where the troops come in and it's just this massive, elongated mass gunfight, I don't have too much noted right there, because it's just like, here's a whole bunch of people shooting each other. Here's Honda and Zangief fighting. Actually, the bit where Honda and Zangief, the Hawaiian sumo wrestler and the Russian guy, end up fighting through the model of Bisonopolis. And they insert like Godzilla type sound effects over the top as they stomp through the buildings and crush them underfoot.
It's almost like that was the reason.
That, yeah.
It's like that was the reason they had the model in the first place, just so they could have that scene as a Godzilla takeoff.
Yeah, I mean, how could that? I mean, everything was already there. It would have been a waste for them not to do that.
And I don't know if this is... I think it might have been, yes. I think it might have been when they were just about to go into the fight. But I love how Jean-Claude Van Damme has to do the whole ripping off his shirt and has a muscle flex close-up. Like, it was almost like in his contract that had to be in every film, something like that.
Another like nod to the game, because when he does a flex... he's got the US flag tattooed across his bicep, which is his corresponding character in the game has that as well.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I like that. But they're almost like, okay, we've got to remind you of the things we put in this movie, so they have to do a close up. But I appreciate them. I appreciate things more probably when they don't throw it in your face, and it's more sort of like cool nods in the background, you know. But I don't want to give this movie more credit than it for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think they really thought that much.
Oh no, I do think some of the stuff in here were like little cool nods to the game. I mean, that like as with like Bison, I think some of the nods to the game are some of the other highlights, especially when you pick them up. So you know, there was stuff that I know I certainly appreciated seeing, like that control panel. That tattoo, a few other bits and pieces along the way, and like I already said, the outfits. It's like, okay, I can rate that. They're actually this movie has got nothing to do with the game. The game doesn't really have much of a plot. It's basically an excuse to pair of fighters. And I noticed as this movie progressed, they made sure that they started pairing people off for these fight scenes as well. Just to have these moments where you've got two particular fighters, you know, taking each other on. Well,
that's what the people that have played the game would be used to. So I suppose even if it is not necessarily the movie people expected, at least they've got those things in there for the fans too.
Yeah, but of course it all leads to the I suppose the showdown, the fight. Which seems pretty one-sided for Jean-Claude Van Damme's side initially, and then, oh look, he's won, or has he?
Oh, I just couldn't believe. Even again, we've got a video game universe here, so anything can happen. But I just couldn't believe that, because that's what I was mentioning earlier. I think that was the board that he used to create the super monster, wasn't it? So he actually managed by Bison landing on it, gets shocked back into. Into being alive again. Yeah,
no, he had some sort of system in his suit for revival, because he goes through the thing, you know, administering adrenaline and starting compression, and like his entire suit moves up and down like it's giving him CPR.
Oh, but then
it was so tacky, but so fun,
and almost like a shot straight out of a horror movie. Yeah, as you said, when you've got what was the guy? Van Damme at the front, and then you just got Tim Bison just rises up. Ready to take him over. But yeah, no, I knew he wasn't going to go down that easily. And it kind of, again, these are I always think of these as little nods to having a one-up in in a game and having another chance to play.
But if I may quote another thing, because there's a line saying, "You came expecting a madman, but you found was a god." And after they fight for a bit, what is it? "You still refuse to accept my godhood? Keep your own god. In fact, this might be a good time to pray to him. For I beheld Satan as he fell from heaven, like lightning," and then proceeds to shoot lightning from his fingers. Because why not?
Incredibly unconvincing lightning at that, but hey, it's not necessarily like it's going to be over the top from now on. But yeah, I really like that, and I think he was really even though we've said he's enjoyed it the whole way through, I think he probably would have got a real kick out of that finale bit as well, especially living it up more as the villain than ever before. But yeah, I'm glad he got to be in the showdown. Yeah,
and he gets to literally fly around the set, knocking Jean-Claude Van Damme over.
God, I'm hoping that didn't contribute to possibly an early death. I find it really hard that they would have put him on stuff like that. But and it's always funny when you watch movies where they are hoisting them up like that, and it's so obvious and it's pulling them from the top of the bag, and they're leaning forward in a certain way. I couldn't unsee that. But yeah, he seemed to be enjoying that as well.
You kind of like being his last performance. I'm glad he enjoyed it, and he wasn't like some of the other big name actors we see in a lot of these movies that just kind of tolerate their way through. Ben Kingsley, I'm looking at you.
Yes, yeah, and I think and probably a lot to do with the fact that he wanted to watch it with his daughters or his family. He wasn't going to put in a half-assed effort.
Yeah. Of course, he's going in for another swoop down, and we get the Jean-Claude Van Damme flying spin kick, which is so good they have to replay it twice before knocking Bison back into his own bank of television monitors. Woo! Oh, actually, we missed a bit where Bison thought he'd killed Guile on the boat. It just goes, "Game over!"
Oh, again, a lot. Yeah, these little touches, I appreciated them, even though now I kind of want to play the game, so I can understand half these, comparisons.
So as soon as that happens, a self-destruct sequence starts, and it's like, oh, okay, Guile's in the heart of this complex, and apparently he's got 10 seconds to escape before everything starts exploding. So of course everybody gets out just in time. Oh, but oh no, where's Jean-Claude Van Damme? As everything just keeps exploding.
But then nothing's going to stop him that easily, and it's just it seems to always have that typical, oh my god, he's been saved, and everyone, it's like, oh, I don't know, it just seems so typical. It's like leaving that moment where you think he's going to die and he just appears, like very much like that similar part at the start when he gets shot.
Yeah, comes out of the smoke, and there actually was a moment where I thought he was going to kiss Kylie. They kind of have this look, so I'm thinking that's probably when they were still having the affair.
Well, that's the thing, because as I said, from day one, I assumed this was going to be more of a, them and the two leads and sort of end up being them sort of as a love interest, but we never quite get there.
No, when he suspects Cammy Colomino's character of crying, just goes, "Oh no, sir, it's just a tear gas." Oh, yeah. I can't do the accent she did. Seriously,
yeah. But that part was probably the worst actually acted in that particular bit. Sorry, Kylie.
Absolutely, and that final shot where they all strike a pose, and that was all based on victory poses from the game.
And for some reason, I don't know if Kylie was looking somewhere else, but for some reason hers is like with her back to the audience and facing the front, and it just looks so awkward.
Yeah. Well, she didn't get in her full game outfit because Kemi in the game basically wears a fairly skin tight and high cut leotard.
Oh, okay.
And yes, her that basically was the pose from the game. So if you can imagine that, but without pants, basically that would have been what Kylie Minogue was doing.
Okay, I understand. And again, of course, one last chance to put the logo up on the screen.
oh yes, they can't not put that logo up there. And yeah, then we got some pretty average 90s music and rap music.
Yeah, and it was funny because
to serenade us out of the movie.
Because I think this is the guy you were talking. I'm not sure of the name you said earlier, but the guy for the Good Morning Vietnam guy. But this was him, him doing the radio broadcast at the end as well. And I kind of wanted him to be doing that over the whole credits. It was always annoying when the songs came in, but he'd say something like, "This what is it?" Then it comes on. That wasn't. Yeah, that song wasn't a hit for us, but this one is. And you're like going, it would have been cool if they'd used popular songs of some kind. But, it's kind of quirky way of doing it.
Yeah. Making jokes about Bison and his soldiers and stuff like that over the closing credits. Because, I was listening to this terrible songs. He goes, okay, this song's a hit. No, Adrian. No, it's not.
And then it leads in with that song and you're like, whose decision was that? Maybe not in the countries that we're talking about.
But with those songs, as I was watching the credits, I'm thinking, who was doing these awful songs? And it's like, Ice Cube, Public Enemy.
Oh, was it really?
LL Cool J, MC what? MC Hammer did that. Oh god, that awful "Straight to My Feet" song.
God, what is it with MC Hammer in these movies? Like, especially in the 90s, like.
What are these people doing on this soundtrack? Oh my god, they must have thought this was going to be huge. They've actually got big name artists from the 90s doing the soundtrack.
Well,
holy dooly, they had high hopes for this.
Well, the fact that you were saying that too, high hopes, and you know, they thought this was going to be big, I was quite surprised that we had a stinger at the end, especially in 1994. I was so surprised. I went, oh my god, I actually said out loud, we've got a stinger. It's almost like, it was like the scene out of Ghostbusters, we've got one! And it was just really weird to see it, you know, sort of early on. I know they do it heaps now, but that definitely seemed like they were calling out for a sequel, or were intending to make one.
Oh, I mean, what do you mean? You just have Bison's arm punching through the rubble as he is brought back to life again right at the end of the movie because one solar panel in his base is still working. Only takes one. That's all they need to reboot everything and bring him back to life again.
And it's like, sorry, Bison, I know you've got your arm in the air, but unfortunately, if they were to do another one, they probably would have had to have found someone else to play Bison, which would have been a shame. So, yeah. So
well, hopefully that wasn't what they had for Dolph Lundgren, because there was no way Dolph Lundgren could follow on from Raul Julia.
Oh, definitely.
Sorry, Dolph. I do respect your work and I do enjoy a lot of your movies, but yeah, you know Raul Julia.
Yeah, exactly. You're fangirling again, Trevor.
Oh, mercy me.
It's a bit late now to be saying anything, but yeah, so...
and him as Gomez Adams makes me all fluttery.
Well, and this is around the period too, because I've always, not that he was not that I know much about his film career, but he was always, very much known for his character acting, so, the more I think about it, probably was a very perfect choice for Bison, even in maybe not the best movie.
Absolutely. So that's literally got us to the end of the movie, Kristian. Was there anything else that you wanted to cover over before we move on?
No, I think I've got everything. It's a bit of a worry when you got more on the credits than the second half of the movie, but that's all right. I am fine.
I'm sure we may have comments about that. So... So I guess we need to find out about the redeemability of this movie. So, Kristian, I did pick this, so shall I allow you to go first? Did you find any redeeming features or otherwise? And what do you think about the redeemability of Street Fighter?
Okay, an interesting movie that, again, I probably wouldn't have gone out of my way to watch unless it was for this, but I was glad to finally get a chance to see it. Now... The problem with a movie like this, again, I'm going back to Movie World again. This movie just felt very studio bound to me, and a bit. It felt like a lot like the character actors at Movie World had found a few sets and decided to set up a camera and film themselves in a pantomime or something like that. And I know I'm probably referring to a lot of the scenes with Bison, and that wasn't a bad thing, especially with Raul Julia. Like, he really lapped it up, but unfortunately, everybody else didn't really add anything more to it to sort of give him something to play off. But I felt that it was too slight of a plot, and they added too much extra stuff to try to flesh it out a bit, and as a result got quite confusing. Like, the second half, as you said, was building up to more of this, the one-on-one fights and things like that. So, I don't know, I felt like they could have probably made it a little bit shorter and not fleshed it out with some of these extra things, but I know they've got to give these characters a bit more of a heart, I suppose. But I really appreciated the editing, especially in the earlier parts too, and I thought that pace, that they maintained earlier with the news reports was going to keep going. But yeah, I did really appreciate that, and the camp elements of it, of course, and pretty much Raul Julia playing all those. So, unfortunately, the film didn't hold my interest, and it was one of those ones that was promising at the start, but just didn't seem to maintain it. And it got to the point, probably not even halfway, but earlier, where I was going, okay, this is actually kind of boring me, which is kind of hard for a film like this, where it essentially does seem like there's action all the time. But yeah, I was finding it a bit hard to sort of hold my interest, and I actually think I will be seeing that Street Fighter logo everywhere from now on, because it was used so much in the movie. So I know that was a bit all over the place, but in terms of whether I find this film redeemable, unfortunately not. I think there was just too much confusion, and it's one of those cases where they tried to flesh it out by giving the characters a bit more substance, but I actually think in this case it went against it. It could have been a lot snappier and, I don't know, a lot more fun. It just felt too... Yeah, it wasn't colourful enough, and I think when you've got such a great performance by Raul Julia as Bison, I don't think anything else could have lived up to it. If it was more of a colourful candy world like his sort of set was, I would have found it a bit more convincing. But unfortunately, it's irredeemable for me.
Ooh, okay. So we've got an irredeemable. So let's see what I can do.
Sorry.
Now, look, seriously, I think as I mentioned before, there were a surprising number of familiar faces throughout this movie just popping up, thinking, I know that guy, I know that guy, I know that guy. Some of them I worked out who they were, other ones I've still got no idea. But in the early part of the movie, at the start of it, I did find myself laughing a lot. A lot of it was that dumb things following dumb things, and then just absolutely being blown away by Raul Julia turning up and just blowing everybody else out of the water. I mean, that seemed to ease off. As it progressed, it got less jokey and more actiony, which, funnily enough, as you said, brought the actual entertainment value down. Kylie's attempt at an English accent, though, that stayed funny throughout. Recognising Brisbane was a little treat. Seeing how bad the Brisbane River looked, not so much. Raul Julia, again, was the absolute treat. He gave it his all. And I appreciated the move to get the characters into their game costumes. I figured that was pretty cute. This was a pretty dumb movie and was let down by its action finale. And look, I really found myself, it was kind of a borderline. It really got let down by the end of the movie. And it's only the glorious, the wonderful, the awesome performance of Raul Julia as M. Bison that is raising it just above the line for me. So he makes it redeemable.
Oh, wow. A split decision. I didn't think we'd have one of those tonight. I actually thought you'd find it irredeemable too, Trevor. So right on the line there, but on the other side.
Yeah, it was so close. It was so close. It was like... I think, it's Tuesday. You've picked a madman, but instead you've found a god! Game over!
And I do have the feeling
so
that if Raul Julia wasn't in it, your redeemability might have been a little bit different on this movie.
There's no way it would be redeemable without him. Let's just put it that way. He's the only thing making this redeemable.
Wow.
Oh, wow, a split decision. Now, I do have a couple of extra opinions for this one. So we'll see how that goes. So see if that can stack it either way. So first up, if you listen to our Tammy and the T-Rex podcast, you'll know that Tim Burns, our special guest for our return podcast, the second I mentioned it, he gave it a redeemable. So I'm going to count that as an extra opinion.
There you go.
And as I mentioned earlier, my wife Susie, and co-host of What the History podcast, plug, she decided to have a bit of a say. So Kylie Minogue's accent was grating. And was there really a need to show Jean-Claude's flying spin kick 3 times? Raul Julia was great, but he was having way too much fun for this movie. And she considered the movie not redeemable. So our extra opinions are also split.
Well, thanks, Susie, for backing me up. I was getting a bit worried that I'd picked the wrong thing there, but good to see that. It seems like you're either one way or the other with this one. So
yeah, absolutely, it's just Now we may not have been able to give a definitive on this particular movie, but of course it does have its fans. So because we do like to focus on the positives where we can, I like to finish with a nice positive review. So the title of this review is Amazing! Very obviously written by someone who's never played the video games and decided they'd rather write a screwball comedy with undertones of an action flick. I now see where the inspiration for comedy action flicks like Pineapple Express and Tropic Thunder originated. I freaking love this dumb fun movie. 5 stars.
Wow, I'm even surprised that you could put it in the same category as Tropic Thunder. That's a big statement, so...
Oh, I'll be controversial. I didn't like Tropic Thunder.
Oh, okay. So there you go. I got it, a split decision.
True, there we go. But a movie we're not even talking about. There we go.
I can't win. Oh, it's alright.
It's all good. Okay, so I think that wraps up Street Fighter nicely. So if you were relying on us to tell you whether or not it was worth watching, we can't help you this time. You're on your own to make your own choice. But that's not certain. That's not that much of a bad thing, surely?
Oh, definitely not. And I think, hey, it just leaves it open to what could the next one be.
Absolutely, and I believe, Kristian, if we're going to talk about what the next one will be, I believe it's your choice.
Well, back to the list again for this year, so being my first choice. Now, I'm actually looking at the poster of this film right in front of me now going, oh, I've saved a good one. Now, I went to watch this actually recently because it's always been one of those historically, box office bomb, as we used the term earlier, and I thought this was probably a good chance for us to watch it. Now, we're going back to the 80s for this one, so we've been doing a bit more recent ones lately, so I thought we should go back to the 80s again for something a bit different. Now, it's a movie directed by Bob Clark, who'd freshly come off Porky's, which was quite a big film in the 80s. The screenplay was by Sylvester Stallone, and he actually starred in the lead role. Now, we have had Sylvester Stallone appear in a couple of things before. I believe I think the controversial one was, or the unusual one was Staying Alive, where, the director of the, Saturday Night Fever sequel. But when you see Sylvester Stallone paired with Dolly Parton in a movie, we're watching Rhinestone from 1984.
I thought, is he going to Rhinestone? He's going to Rhinestone.
I'm looking at the poster now, and he's doing pretty much looks like he's arm wrestling with Dolly Parton. So that would probably have to be the weirdest leads in a movie ever. But it'd be interesting. I've heard nothing but awful things, so I'm interested to see it. Yeah.
I've got to admit, I haven't actually seen Rhinestone. I kind of only know it by reputation. So, I am very curious as to see what we make of it. I mean, I don't mind Dolly Parton. That's one thing, I suppose.
Yes, she wasn't in that many movies, only about 3 or 4. So it's good to see her in something. Whether playing alongside Sylvester Stallone is a good idea, but we shall see. And he even wrote the screenplay as well, so that's interesting.
Very much so. Now, I've just gone to my usual source to see if we can see if this is available for streaming in Australia, and there are no results. So I'm afraid anybody out there that wants to watch Rhinestone before our next podcast, you're going to have to source it yourselves,
or just have to put up with our version of of what we thought of it. So, and who knows how that could go. True. I'm just hoping we can have a unanimous decision next time. But as I think we were unanimously split this time, so...
Absolutely. Well, we don't have to agree on everything. That's the whole point of having two people with different tastes that have an overlap, of course. I think which makes this a good way to do this podcast.
Definitely.
So, can't complain about the occasional split decision. But will there be a split decision on Rhinestone? We can only find out
from one
as we go on. Now, moving on to other things, and I know, Kristian, that you've been quite busy with getting a number of things all set up, so would you care to let us know what wonderful events you're organising for the near future?
Okay, well, we're launching in February our Metro Arts movie program. Now, this year I'll be bringing out so many classics that I've never been able to before, and being an independent exhibitor, I don't get the chance to do a lot of these movies, so we've got some really great anniversaries. We've got things like Barbarella and things like that coming up, and Clerks, and Office Space. Trevor, you'll be excited, so I'm really excited. Just cinemas are never able to get these movies, so I'm really excited to be launching that in the 9th of February. There's too many to mention, so head to my website for that. But we've also are returning with 60s, 70s and 80s parties. We've got the John Waters Fest back again this year, and of course featuring the two of us on the Rufus project. I was going to say online, but however way you want to look at it, but being part of the Rocky Horror Picture Show on the 23rd of March with a live floor show. Now that's at the Chanel Cinema, and it's already over half sold out. So for full details, visit christianfletcher.com or Christian Fletcher Events on Facebook. There's always something coming up. Too many to mention.
Absolutely. And from my side of things, I'm still pushing at trying to get more content out there. So, of course, we've got the Rufus Project. You'll find enhanced versions of these podcasts on the Rufus Project YouTube channel. We've also got the What the History podcast. which I mentioned before I do with my wife Susie, where we take a couple of bits of bizarre history and we let you know about them in bite-sized pieces. It's a nice, quick, fun podcast. And again, that's got enhanced versions on YouTube. I've also relaunched the 1 credit challenges with actual production values this time, in that they've got an opening title and a closeout. Woohoo! Technology. And we are working on getting our Insert Movie The Game series up as well. We're working on the pilot for that. So, Kristian, how much do you think we should tell the people about that at this point in time?
Ooh, I don't know. Well, we've got a very relevant audience listening, but let's just say we're launching very soon with something we've been speaking about quite recently. Again, Trevor, I'm not wanting to spoil too much, but
okay.
If you've enjoyed hearing about what we've spoken about tonight, on this podcast, I definitely recommend getting into the next one. That's probably the best I can say.
Absolutely. Well, once we've got something a bit more concrete about Insert Movie the Game, you better believe I'll be talking a lot about it. Oh yes. Looking
forward to it.
So I think on that very mysterious note, so mysterious, I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up. So, Kristian, we may not have agreed on this movie, but certainly I have enjoyed chatting Street Fighter with you.
Definitely.
And I look forward to talking Rhinestone in a couple of weeks' time.
I know, that shall be interesting, so I'm going in fresh as well, so I shall look forward to chatting to you then and see what we can do.
Absolutely. So, we'll catch you all next time.
Hello out there! How's everybody feeling tonight?
Did you ever sing in front of a live audience before, ever?
Singing
No, never.
song.
I need a little work.
And I'll help you work hard if you help me.
Cowboy.
Hey, Tennessee, you've been a fine audience.
Is it too good to be bad? So bad it's good. What's this movie? Do you think we should? It's got bad dialogue, dodgy creatures, but we want to know what the redeeming features.
Boy? Oh boy.
Kristian and Trevor on the case, watching movies from all over the place. IMDb says it's bad, but we want to know, is it fun to be had?
Boy? Oh boy.
Redeeming features.
Boy? Oh boy.
I'm sorry. I don't remember any of it.
You don't remember?
For you, the day bison graced your village was the most important day of your life. But for me, it was Tuesday.